All right. Well, we are going to continue to have fun here at the NADA live stage. Is everybody having a great time so far? Yeah, you are. I heard somebody in the back. I appreciate that. There you go. I like that. So one of the things that we always love to do at NADA is talk about new things, right? Who doesn't love to talk about new things, especially in our industry? It's very rare and unique when you have truly new things that come to the market. And so I want to definitely keep with that, and we're going to sit down and have a conversation, and we're going to talk about the INEOS Grenadier. And some of you are looking like, what is that? Well, that's why we're going to tell you a little bit more about it. And so to help me with that and to join me, I have Greg. Greg, are you ready? Come on up. Where's the round of applause? You guys forgot there you go. They forgot the rules of the living room. It's every now and again you have to remind them. It's okay. Please, have a seat.
Thank you.
So first off, before we get started, tell everyone a little bit about yourself, and then let's talk about this cool picture that's up there.
The INEOS Grenadier. Yeah, absolutely. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Greg Clark. I'm the Executive Vice President for the Americas for INEOS Automotive. Thank you for having me up here. It's going to be a pleasure to talk about this. Typically, the way that we start off is explaining what is INEOS. It's kind of the biggest brand you've never heard of.
Right.
INEOS is the second largest chemical company in the world. Most consumers would not have heard of INEOS because most consumers are not buying massive quantities of petrochemicals. We're privately held, and being the largest or second largest chemical company in the world, our owners have the sufficient capital to be able to say, right, we see gaps in the market in different places. We're starting to move into B2C businesses rather than just B2B. What that particularly gave us the opportunity, or our primary stakeholder the opportunity to do, is to say, I see a gap in the market for an extraordinarily rugged, very hard-working 4x4 vehicle. And over the course of the last 5 years, that has become the INEOS Grenadier, which we launched 60 days ago now. Just around Thanksgiving of 2023, we've launched the Grenadier. We now have just over 1,000 units in operation. We've delivered about 1,400 to our dealers, and the response has been phenomenal so far.
That's great. That's a pretty good stocking stuffer, right? Right around the holiday time for the launch, so that makes it nice, right? So
it's been a long time coming. I think we've had a lot of patient customers who've been with us on this journey for 3 or 4 years, really waiting for the Grenadier. A little bit about the vehicle itself, for those of you that may not have come across the vehicle yet.
Yes.
Internal combustion engine, so we're not an EV competitor. Of course, everybody is on a journey to electrification in one form or another. As a chemical company, we started out in 2017 really saying, well, what does a chemical company know about the construction and creation of an automobile? Not much. So the principle and the strategy from that point was to really partner with people that knew everything about creating an automobile. So Magnus Steyr, who is the producer of the Mercedes-Benz G-Wagon, been involved since the G-Wagon's birth, effectively, are our principal engineering partner. BMW is our engine and powertrain strategic partner and provider. And we've partnered with a roster of really excellent Tier 1 suppliers to bring this vehicle onto the market today. And yeah, the powertrain is phenomenal. It's BMW, which makes it pretty darn good. And that has been a really key selling point for many of our Grenadier customers.
Now, with a lot of other brands launching in some untraditional ways, you guys have seemed to take a more traditional approach with launch and kind of getting out into the U.S. market. What was the strategy behind taking that more conventional approach?
Yeah, I think it was very intentional. I think particularly for the U.S. and the Canadian market, hyper-competitive markets, very, very challenging, lots of excellent competitors. Primarily, we have chosen the dealer franchise model because speed to market, but also because I think OEMs generally, and this is a generalization, but I think OEMs generally underestimate the heavy lifting that it takes to actually serve the customer, not just at the point of sale, but over the course of the lifetime of the vehicle. And so that partnership between OEM and dealers is perfectly logical for us. As a brand new entrant, and as I spoke about a minute ago, a brand that is unknown, is a name that is not a household name by any stretch of the imagination. The equity and the support that our dealer partners bring to this is not to be underestimated. These are very well-known names in each of their communities. We've had the luxury of being able to go out and technically, hand-pick each of our franchise partners across the US and Canada. We have a complement of launch dealers of 21 at the moment, and we're going to grow gradually, steadily, as we make sure that we've proven out all of our systems, processes, and we have the production capacity to be able to feed these dealers.
That's great. So I know you specifically mentioned earlier that you chose to not come out and go with a traditional like EV platform or model. What was the strategy or what was the reasoning behind that of going non-EV? Because of course, as you know, our industry is kind of leading in that direction, or that's kind of been a big thing. Was there something specifically why you guys chose to say, hey, this is where we're going to start and kind of go that route?
Absolutely. In principle, and first and foremost, it is the purpose of the vehicle is meant to be an off-road vehicle.
Okay.
It's very, very capable on-road, but it's supposed to be very, very capable off-road first and foremost. And for those people that do use it in off-road situations, being tethered literally and figuratively to a charging network is not really commensurate with what the vehicle is supposed to be. So it's an adventure vehicle. It's for people that like to go off weekends, weeks, months long, and really get off the grid, literally get off the grid. And so internal combustion engine was the logical choice for us, and clearly it's the most reliable choice, whether it's altitude, temperatures, distance. And so we will have a path in the future to go towards electrification, but it won't be replacing internal combustion, it will be complementing.
That makes sense. And how do you continue to move that needle forward, so to speak? Because like you said, you're 60 days in right now with the launch in the US, and not yet a household name, but where do you see it in, let's say, the next 2 to 3 years? How do you make that transition to become that household name, just like some other manufacturers that we might know?
Yeah, when you're in launch phase, 2 to 3 years seems a lifetime away. So we're very much sort of in the 2 to 3 weeks phase, because we want to focus on taking fast feedback from our dealers, from our customers.
Okay.
I have to say all of which, of course I would say this because I'm biased, but I would say it's been exceptionally positive so far. We've been very validated and gratified by the response that we've had from customers and from dealers. But there's work to do.
Yes.
There will be continuing work to do. At the moment, the focus is making sure that we have stability in processes, that we're listening to both customers and dealers to improve those processes, to introduce the Grenadier to more and more people. We have an order bank of about 9,000 at the moment, which is basically a pent-up order bank that we've built over 2 or 3 years that is going to take the best part of a year to deliver. We are the largest region in the world already, which we are largest in terms of total industry volume, so naturally we would be largest, but the focus is on very much making sure that we are delivering to those customers that have been waiting. After that, if we look further ahead, which is difficult for us to do, we have a pickup derivative of the Grenadier coming. That's coming within calendar year 24.
Okay.
And then we're working on the second and then third model lines, because INEOS, we are quite long-term, quite strategic in the way that the company approaches things. So we have a 10, 15, 20-year horizon where we're bringing further vehicles to the market.
Fantastic. And then what about, because of course, the dealer infrastructure and support. I know you mentioned that you were able to kind of go through and hand select some of your dealer franchises. What does the experience look like for, these purchasers that have been waiting, they've now taken delivery? Are they able to get the full dealership experience as far as service and all of the other aspects that we talked about elemental-wise of the dealership?
Absolutely, and that was critical for us when we were working with each of our partners. We spoke, I think, to maybe 150 or about 150 different groups in terms of interest in the INEOS franchise. What was really critical for us is that we actually had that level of service. And these are mature, often multi-franchise dealer partners that have had experience across many different franchises, whether they're imported, domestic, or otherwise. So making sure that the INEOS experience is a dedicated experience from a sales and service perspective is very important. It's important for us, as it's important for other brands, to make sure that they have really focus from their dealer partners on those franchises. So every one of our dealerships across the country and into Canada offer independent sales and service. We have a separate team that is trained both on the sales and service side to be able to support just the Grenadier. Now, oftentimes there is shared services from a back-of-house perspective, but nevertheless, we've taken the time to make sure that we have partners that have really the bandwidth to be able to dedicate to a new startup. Because working together with them, we're doing something that a friend of mine equated to actually launching a rocket. There's a huge amount of energy getting the rocket actually off the ground and into orbit.
Yes.
And then there's a lesser amount of energy fine-tuning to make sure that it stays in a positive orbit. We're still in that getting it out of the atmosphere stage. Launch has been huge, it's been really successful. And as I said, it's resulted in more than 1,000 units in customers' hands in the last 60 days. We'll continue to do that, and we'll aim to probably get between 8 and 10,000 more out in calendar year 24.
Okay, good. And how do you see yourself with the launch and everything being successful? Do you see that's going to impact in the competitive space? Because there, of course, right now are other brands or vehicles that market that off-road, kind of rugged lifestyle. What's some of the things that you can see that is going to set the Grenadier apart once it's been, like you kind of mentioned, tested and tried and all of that?
It's a vehicle that is kind of touched on the zeitgeist at the moment, and whether this is sort of post-pandemic pragmatism, people want to get off-road, off the grid. There are some wonderful products out there. I mean, certainly if you look at what's happening right now with Wrangler, Bronco, and now Land Cruiser coming into a territory in the 50s and 60s, that's a punch-up. That's a bit of a slugfest with a high volume. That's not us.
Right.
We are very niche, very focused. We are very small volume, as I've said. We are for that customer that wants something that's especially rugged, that sits above that mass market. Our starting price is $71,500. But with that BMW powertrain, all of the capability of the Grenadier, 21st century technology where it's appropriate.
Yes.
But definitely some of the analog nostalgia from the 20th century, switches, things that are immediately accessible, not buried 3 levels down in an infotainment system.
Nice.
So that's kind of what we appeal to, customers that have a bit of nostalgia for that.
Okay.
And want something which is a very purposeful off-road tool.
Yeah.
Very specialist tool, but is actually something that you can comfortably do 6 or 7 hours in on a highway.
That's great. And so I think that's a big thing that you mentioned is really having the specific focus of being able to drill down and say, I'm using this vehicle for this, but I also have the ability to use it for other things. So with that being the kind of differentiating factor, when you talk about launching here in the US and then ultimately growth, how do you see with involving more dealers, or if maybe you have some dealer principals out there that are interested or learning more, how does that growth process look, or how can people get more involved in INEOS and that process?
Yeah, and that process takes time.
Yeah.
And when we were looking at the right partners, we took a lot of time. We wanted to make sure they were very, very intentional choices from both sides. That process takes time. It will evolve through 24 and into 25. Our focus is squarely at the moment on the launch partners that we have at the moment and working together with them to make sure that we've bedded in processes that we're addressing anything that comes up that wasn't expected. So our commitment is firmly to them and to the customers that are waiting. And I mentioned we got 9,000 of them just waiting out there who have been very patient, that we're looking forward to delivering the Grenadier to. But the process of expanding the network has to come eventually.
Right.
It has to be sustainable. It's got to be organic. It's got to be supported by our production capacity because they are hungry mouths to feed, and hopefully they will continue to be hungry as we generate more and more awareness and demand for the Grenadier.
Nice. And you mentioned hand selecting and picking those partners. What were some of the things that went into that selection process? Because of course, we're here, there's tons of dealers, right? And so how did you guys go out and specifically pick those dealers? And was it you going to the dealer, or was there an interest that was created by the dealer and them coming to you? How did that process work?
It's a little of both. I mean, there were definitely dealers that were very aware of us from the very, very beginning and were hand raisers early on. I couldn't say exactly what the mix was of those that were aware and came to us versus those that we went out and actively solicited. The commonality is that they have a huge amount of interest in the Grenadier, that they see the market opportunity, that they have an outstanding reputation for customer service, because this is a customer that's going to go out, that will use the Grenadier in anger, that's going to break things, and so the ownership experience has to be really positive, supported by top quality service, after-sales support, parts and accessories care. Geographically, yes, they had to be in the right places. So we had hand raisers certainly that were from places that were interesting, but interesting for us in the future.
Okay.
And so there are geographies where we really captured reservations from to begin with, who were our original customer hand raisers. And we gravitated towards those places because we wanted to be able to serve those customers first. But we had to find the right partners that existed in those places. And there were some geographies where we chose not to go. We wanted to go, but we chose not to go because we just couldn't find the right partner for us at that time.
Makes sense.
We'll address that over the course of time, probably into 24 and into 25. But yeah, the process was probably the most intentional and the most important one that will that we will have made, or decisions that we will have made, because they are the face of our brand at customer level, and we want to make sure that they are as supportive of us as they are the customers, and that really symbiosis is up to us to support, and it's a great responsibility to be able to have to support that dealer network as well. So we take that very seriously.
Absolutely. And so you mentioned 60 days in, right? Is there any personal testimonies that you've heard from, those that have taken delivery and had the opportunity to get the vehicle out in its element and really enjoy it? Anything that you want to share that you maybe a little anecdotal story that you heard or anything?
Well, yeah, it's we've spent a lot of time in direct conversation with our end customer.
Okay.
And I just 2 nights ago we did a webinar. This is a great forum. But basically, there's a community of customers that have already grown that were doing meetups before they'd ever taken delivery of their Grenadiers, which is great.
Yes.
It's a lot of enthusiasm and passion out there. What they've told us, I think, is capability-wise and substance of the Grenadier has exceeded their expectations. They saw it, they drove it on some of our familiarization events, but actually getting out there into the desert, into wherever they go with it, and using the vehicle for what it's intended to, they've just had a massive amount of pleasure from that. Not only themselves in the driver's seat, but with their families along for the ride as well. Camping, overlanding, whatever they've gone out to do. So I think that's the purchase, the intention of this is not the Grenadier sitting in the driveway, it's what the Grenadier actually enables them to go out and do.
Nice. Now, I know one of the big off-road outdoor things that just recently happened was King of the Hammers. Were you guys able to have a presence there or any interactions there?
Not this time, but it's on the radar. Yeah, it's of interest, and there's so many different things that we'd love to go out and do. There is something, again, coming back to that principle of being quite intentional about what we do.
Yes.
The focus is on those folks that have been with us on this journey.
Okay.
Going out there and then banging the drum and effectively rolling up and generating more demand is something for us to do later in 2024.
Okay.
We're very conscious that we have to continue that journey of generating awareness, filling the top of the sales funnel, and making sure that there are more and more customers familiar with the Grenadier. But that's not now. That's a little bit later. We've got to focus very much on our dealers and our customers first.
And so what I hear you saying, the biggest takeaway, one of the advantages of INEOS and the Grenadier is that it's specifically built for specific customers that have a focus and a desire that they want to fulfill, but ultimately it is a very versatile overall concept and vehicle.
You're right. Yeah, absolutely right. The principle of this vehicle was it was built on purpose to be very, very off-road capable. We recognized that has to be pragmatic. You've got to be actually appropriate for everyday life. There are some folks that use this as a daily driver, and it's very, very capable at doing exactly that. But on the weekends, or whether you take it away for a month or so, it's exceptionally capable off-road.
Fantastic. Well, Greg, thank you so much for your time. Errol, we definitely appreciate it. And I'm excited. I mean, the picture looks great. And at least now when I see it on the road, I'll know, I know what that is.